Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Claudia Monicelli with another episode of Multiple Voices. My Multiple Voices podcast, true to its name, includes different series. For example, we have the Voices of Love, where we discuss relationships, the voice of empowerment, the voice of laughter and play, the voice of pleasure, and the magical voice of archetypes and how they change the way we live. But we also have the voice of memory that includes everything from history to discussions of past life regression. There's also writing voices, where we interview both seasoned writers and authors who have just started getting their feet wet with writing, and we learn what can work for you as potential writers. Our series called Voice of the Spirit discusses different forms of spirituality and religion. And then Channeling Voices is a series that covers what happens when you channel, but is also extended to mediumship. Take a moment to review this podcast if you've enjoyed listening, and leave a hearty 5 stars. I'd appreciate it. Enjoy your listening. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm back. I'm back with another guest, and this time it's all about relationships. A couple of months ago, we had a Dr. Love, a woman who talked about relationships and love. Today we have a further spin on relationships, on the sensual side to the relationships. And let me introduce you to Debbie Elzea. Debbie, say hello to our audience.
Hello, nice to be here.
Debbie's out in Colorado. There's an 8-hour difference between us. And she describes herself as an intimacy specialist. She helps women create more loving, sexy relationships with their loved ones and with themselves. Because these kinds of relationships could be the source of pleasure, safety, and joy. And most women aren't really taught the skills of bonding with a man, or self-care, and how to be happy, and how to move toward pleasure. If you struggle with these areas, you're in the right place, because Debbie will highlight a little about what we could do or what is important for us as women. You have the floor. Usually I ask my guests what they would like to talk about, and she's obviously given me a number of different topics, and high on the list is the relationship and the sexual side to the relationship. How much does that account for? How important is that in a relationship? And I also want to talk about the male mind. That's really interesting for us. So you have the floor, Debbie.
Yeah. So my approach is that pleasure and connection, lovemaking and relationship are our greatest sources of pleasure in life. And it's a lost opportunity if we're not really getting the most out of our intimate relationship. And that many people struggle in this area. It doesn't mean that you are broken or that there's something wrong with your relationship. It could just be that female sexual pleasure is complicated. It's an art, it's a science, and it's a learned skill, as are male-female relationships.
Mm-hmm. Debbie, when you say complicated, what do you mean?
Yeah. Well, female sex, it's a lot of things, okay? So let's face it, in the hundreds of thousands of years that humans have roamed the earth, female sexual pleasure wasn't really a priority, right? Everything was about survival of the species, Claudia, right? And a male orgasm, for instance, is necessary for the survival of the human race, right? And so female sexual pleasure has really only become an issue in the last few generations. Mm-hmm. And it has been, sexuality for women has been something that's been repressed or in service of a man. And there's reasons behind that make sense, right? It always led to pregnancy. If a woman didn't have a man to protect and take care of her, she and her young were very vulnerable. So it's understandable that female sexual pleasure hadn't been at the top of the list for human survival. But now we are empowered, and it's a wonderful time to be a female and to be sexually empowered and such. So Yet it turns out that it's a learned skill because our bodies are far more complicated than a male's, right?
Mm-hmm.
A typical sexual act, even nowadays, has the man struggling not to come while the woman's struggling to come. It's just the way
Yeah.
we're built,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not, and
Um,
also we want emotional connection in our relationship, and that
right.
is also hard to find.
Have you, you work with a lot of women as clients, and do you hear that from women that they never asked for their pleasure? They were not used to asking for what they want. Is
Sure.
this, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Asking for what you want is a skill, right? That requires knowing what you want. And let's face
yeah,
it,
right,
most women don't
right,
even really know what they want. They only have been
right.
served up what whoever their lover is has delivered to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've kind of taken a passive seat. And it's even harder and harder nowadays where the de facto sex education is pornography. And
Yeah,
pornography, with its
unfortunately,
no
yeah.
plot, no romance, no loving, honoring, and cherishing of women, is not what most women want, and that is what they are being served. And if they don't know and explore and take the time to be conscious and then learn, have the safety and comfort in their relationship that they can ask for what they want, they're going to get served
Yeah.
some pretty lousy sex, huh?
So we're talking of exploration in the sense of masturbation. Is that right? Am I
Well,
getting
that's
that?
just one way. Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
if you have a lover, you can become sexual explorers together
Right,
if you
right.
set the groundwork work of having a safe enough relationship that you can laugh and be playful and not be
Mm-hmm.
perceived as being critical of each other. You know, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
women, they're asking for what they want. It consists of, I don't know what I want, but I don't want that.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's right. I can see that. I can see that. Do you work with women of all ages, or is there a certain cohort that you work with?
Women of
Different
all
age
ages
groups.
struggle with this. Like I said, the younger women are growing up in a generation where they grew up watching porn too, right? And they've never explored what they might like. Older women struggle with things like menopause, when your
Mm-hmm.
desire and your libido might just fall off a cliff, like happened to me at menopause. And here I
Mm-hmm.
am, a sexuality specialist, and I'm like, oh my God, my libido is gone. But I'm like, phew, luckily I know that for women, the desire in us comes from our minds and our hearts, and our
Yeah.
bodies follow. So I didn't, I was disappointed that this hormonal change happened to me at menopause, but I still enjoy making love to my husband every chance I get because it's pleasurable, it's
Yeah.
connecting, it brings us together. Not
Yeah.
because I'm
Yeah.
horny, right? The horniness
Yeah.
kind of comes and goes. We can't just rely
Mm-hmm.
upon that as a trigger for making love. That's a recipe for sex starved
There,
relationships.
there are a couple of things that I want to challenge you on. Two things that you said. Well, we mentioned pornography in a derogatory sense a few times. And I have to say, there's a lot to be said about pornography. It does have a purpose and objective. It may not be the objective to teach women what they desire or what they desire, but I think pornography needs to be mentioned in a more neutral way.
Mhm.
Also, another thing that you mentioned is being in menopause and how your libido changes. I've not found that across the board for women at all. At all, it's always different from one woman to the next. I counsel women as well. I work with women, and I don't find that that is a standard standard development in women. It is the mainstay. We could say probably 70 in my case, what I'm finding, 70-80% of women, but not all women lose their
Sure.
libido. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
which is
why it's
great.
help. Yeah, that's why it's helpful that my coaching is one on one, right? Because nothing is
Yeah.
ever going to say, everybody and everything. So,
Yeah.
many, you could say many, or you could say most in a
Yeah.
lot of these cases,
Yeah.
and then everything would be, coached one on one. My coaching is called More Intimacy, by the way, which is interesting
Mm-hmm.
because I chose the word more intimacy because women hear the word intimacy And we think of like largely most of us, again, not all
Yeah.
of us, but women
Yeah.
hear it and they think about this emotional connection, this special
Yeah.
kind of
Hmm.
closeness. Ask
Yeah.
most men, what does intimacy mean to you? And
Yeah,
what do
of
you think they're
course.
going to answer? Sex,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
I picked the name for my coaching is more intimacy because it appeals to most men and most women is they both want intimacy and how do we both get what we want out of the relationship?
Yeah.
And because my emphasis, and I've been to sex coaching school with, in a variety of places, including like Berkeley, California and such. And I know that in the sex positive community, they're very pro porn, quite
Hmm.
frankly. And because I'm into my focus is intimacy, and the women that are drawn to me are the ones that want lovemaking.
Yeah.
They don't want to
Hmm.
go out and explore polyamory and,
Yeah. Right.
kinkiness with strangers and such.
Good. That's
That's
important
not,
to say. Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
own women are ones that want lovemaking. Scratch the
Yeah.
surface. And I think even
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
hookup culture, what women want is lovemaking.
Yeah, yeah.
They want
It's
to be
it's
cherished.
interesting. It's interesting this a while back, I guess maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, I had a woman who dealt particularly with the kinky side to sexuality, and that is a world in all of its own. And there she had to deal with polyamory, all different kinds of gender definitions, and but that is completely different, completely different. It's interesting that you have this niche. Now, what? And the questions are coming up, so there's so many
Right.
questions. First, you mentioned something on no more intimacy. Is that, I believe that is the name of your website?
Yeah, moreintimacy.net.
Moreintimacy.net. Okay, and there people, our audience, can find what you do, services. What will they find when they go to your website?
They will find, well, I mean, there's videos, there's a quiz, what's blocking your bliss. It's based upon some publications I've done on women need 6 things for great sex lives. Which of these are blocking your bliss?
Only
Is it
six? Only
only 6?
six?
These are high umbrella. These are at an umbrella level. Like one of them is knowledge, and knowledge is a lot, right?
Of course, of
Knowledge is not
course.
only how bodies and anatomy work, but it's how what you like, right? So it's pretty broad. Embodiment is another one. Like how do you get out of your busy, distracted or judgy mind and into the
Right.
moment and into the pleasure? So you'll find resources like that paper, the quiz, videos, and there is a focus on marriage, monogamy, and
Uh-huh.
lovemaking.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's go into that just for a second because this is
Mhm.
surprising for me. There's a focus on marriage and monogamy. So, most of the clients that come to you are with a standard partner, whether they are married or not. I mean, do you have people who come to you that are just living together as well, or is that the minority?
Not usually, but it frequently the case is that the woman does want to get married. We just, the most
I see.
many women we crave being, our man cherishing us, being his exclusive, his one and only. It's like even I, I'm a tantric specialist as well, tantric sacred sexuality. So my husband and I have gone to many different locations, even internationally, to participate in tantra festivals and even teach them. And there's a pretty fluid. I'd say 50% of the people are polyamorous in places like this. And my feeling is, I don't share my man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I don't
yeah,
want to share my man. Why would I share
yeah,
my
yeah.
man? I
How
think that a lot of us resonate with that.
of curiosity, in contexts of that kind, how do you portray that to somebody? How do you communicate that to someone? I mean, you're not walking around with tags on,
Yeah.
he's
It's not a
mine.
swinger setting. It's not a
Yeah,
swinger
yeah.
setting, so it doesn't really come up. I mean, we're
I
holding
see.
hands. We're so in love. We partner
I
with each
see.
other.
I
It
see.
just shows we are together. And people come up to us all the time and are like, "Oh my God, you two are so in love. You middle-aged people are so passionate." Like I hope that when I get to be your age, I'll be like that.
Thanks. That's funny. That's funny. All right, now wait a minute. Before we get off topic or we stray too much, because the relationship, all right, we talk generally about what you do and what people could find on your website and the type of work you do. And in terms of relationships, I think we scratched the surface because we did say that the physical side to a relationship is very important, and that's the reason. That's just the reason for being of your business, actually. But there's another topic that you suggested, and that I'd like to jump on if you're game, and if you think
Yeah.
we have the time, is the mind of a man, understanding the male mind. I mean,
Yeah.
if you could do that, I think you would be a millionaire. Excuse
Yeah.
me, guys
Oh,
out there.
it's so true. I love it when men hear what I'm coaching on and they're like, yes, yes, that's what I've been trying to say for years. I've even interviewed by two male psychologists who were married, and they were like, yes, every woman needs to know this, right? Your man is not you. He is looking at the world through entirely different lenses as a man. He is not a big, hairy woman who is misbehaving. He sees things differently, right? And so how to get my coaching is also about how to get the best out of your man by treating the man the way he craves being treated. And one of the things I will have the woman do is, let's be your husband's girlfriend. Remember that energy, that vibe, how you acted when you were courting, when you wanted him to fall in love with you and put a ring on it. Remember how you were
Oh, wait,
playful
wait,
and
wait, wait, wait. I'm
flirty?
going to jump on that, right?
Uh-huh.
Before we,
Okay. So channeling that, because it's
yeah,
a good way to go through life. It's like boyfriend and girlfriend. We lose it often when we're married, and now we're like husband, wife, mother, father, and we
sure,
bring this
sure,
mothering
sure,
energy to our husband, and
sure,
he doesn't
sure,
appreciate it. So how to
sure.
channel your inner girlfriend again.
Yeah, I get that, and I, myself, I'm writing this book about women and how they need to bring out the femininity of them. They are women. What is a woman, right? However, when you say going back to being the girlfriend, of course, we're all in different phases, right? And many women have felt under shackles for many, many years. And so when they start to get some freedom, it could be, let's say, economic freedom, it could be due to anything. Maybe their children are starting to grow, so they have some freedom. The idea of going back to a girlfriend, wouldn't that be demeaning for someone who's just, and this is a question, I told you I'd be a devil's advocate,
Uh-huh,
demeaning in
sure.
the sense of wait a minute, I'm just having my freedom, why should I go and act like a silly girlfriend again? I would like him to respect me for who I am, or even see me as sexy because I have that freedom. This
Oh,
is,
I mean, there's nothing to do. There's nothing about freedom in being his girlfriend. It's about attraction.
yeah, sure, sure,
It's
sure,
about
sure,
building attraction. It's not about a
sure.
submissive thing, although if submission is fun for you, then that's fun. It's not necessarily about submission. It's about increasing attraction. I mean, what choice do you have? Would you rather show up as his mother, mothering energy,
No,
and or
there's so
wearing the
many.
pants in the family? Unfortunately, that what happened is if you start to compete with your husband, right? Here's a challenge that we have modernly. We compete with each other, and then we're not
Sure, sure,
complimenting each other. We're
sure,
not,
sure. But there's let's get to the bedroom, just to clarify this, right? So we're in the
especially
bedroom.
evident in the bedroom.
Yeah, right. So everyone has a different nature in the bedroom. We talked about challenging, or being the mother, or being the girlfriend, or whatever. In the bedroom, there are more active players, let's say, more roles, or more passive roles, more dominant roles, more submissive roles. But then there are people who really get off on switching their roles. They can be dominant, but they like to be submissive as well. Does this type of dynamics, does that come into your coaching at all when you work with women?
I mean, the thing is, people want to be authentic, right? But they also want to explore.
Yeah.
Many women don't actually appreciate how wonderful it is to just receive,
Yeah,
to
right.
be
Right.
receiving. They think that they're performing, right?
Right. Right.
They're putting on a performance, and they're not actually receiving and
Right.
noticing and being in the moment. So I would say, shifting out of bad patterns Because how often is that getting you pleasure, right? When you are in a performance mode, then it's all about how do I look? How am I
Mm-hmm.
performing? Da da da. You're right. They're up in their heads. You're not in your senses and in your body.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about authenticity, exploration, and being in the moment. There's a big
Mm-hmm.
element of mindfulness.
Let's go back a second just to the male mind. And I'm still trying to put my eyes behind a male's eyes to see what they're looking at and what they're thinking, you know? What is it about a male's mind that is different from a woman, apart
Oh,
from,
there's so
you mentioned the emotional side?
yeah. My information largely comes from the study of evolutionary psychology.
Mm-hmm.
That is, we have 500,000 years of Homo sapiens. We have roughly 6,000 years, 2% of that has been civilization at all, right?
Uh-huh.
And almost none of it, a blip, a snap in the period of time has been feminism and modernity.
Yeah.
It's only, we are literally cave people walking around in
Right.
civilizations. And the
Mm-hmm.
men have traditionally always been hunters and warriors, and the
Mm-hmm.
women have been gatherers and nurturers.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have evolved differently. Like a man is focus is usually on like one thing at a time. Notice how
Mm-hmm.
we look at them now and we're like, men can't multitask, right? And they're like,
Right.
how are these women multitasking? It's because as a gatherer, you were always, you had lots of kids, right? You had plenty of babies to
Mm-hmm.
take care of, and you were looking for food and you were on the lookout for predators, and you were chatting with all the other
Mm-hmm.
gatherer women gathered around, right? For hundreds of thousands of years. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
your menfolk, they were out hunting. They were
Mm-hmm.
tracking their prey. They were quiet, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were chatting to keep the predators away, but they were quiet, right? Don't you still
Mm-hmm.
notice that in men and women today? The men are focused on one thing. They value
Mm-hmm.
quiet. We value connection and communication and talking and
Mm-hmm.
multitasking. And those still exist today. And those are major sources of conflict for modern couples.
And how do we get around those conflicts?
Understanding them,
Mm-hmm.
respecting them. Like, let's say we don't, if our husband is focused on a task, we don't start distracting him with other tasks, right? And
Mm-hmm.
conversation and things like that. Easy, right? That's an easy one. Um, that men crave respect in a way that women crave connection.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding that. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
more important for us to be like connecting and be like me too and conversation and agreement and things like that. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
as man, it's like desperate for you to respect him as a man. That's why, like,
Mm-hmm.
the mothering energy backfires, even though another woman might be like, oh, come here, sweetie, mother you, right? We don't mind that. A man, it's like kryptonite, right? Disrespectful, like you're not capable, you're not competent. So, understanding some fundamental differences and then just changing behavior slightly to make the other person happy and feel connected or respected.
Yeah. You were talking about evolutionary psychology, and um, I did a recent study on archetypal psychology, based on archetypal psychology, where there were 100 couples. Could have been male, female, could have been mother, father, and they just gave me a bit of information. And I ran a series of models and patterns that I had. And of all of those couples, by far, whether they were two women, two men, or man and woman, there was always the archetypal couple that stood far above all of the rest was the king and the maiden. It wasn't the king and the queen, it was the king and the maiden. The maiden has, and those are archetypes, I don't have to go into it, but the king commands respect, right? And the maiden needs someone to care for her, and that's fine. But what inevitably happens is that the maiden at one point learns to walk on her own 2 feet, and the king has no longer any role. And so this is an eye opener. It made me think of this. You made me think of this when you talked about respect. But that's a two-way street, isn't it? Respect.
Sure.
Yeah. And this is, I've never been a feminist. I never got there with my mind or my experience or anything. So I'm not into feminism at all, but I find that knowing, like you said, getting to know those things that men command respect does help. It does help. But then I see that the other side to this coin is not always forthcoming, that women also need to have respect. Thinking about how that plays out in the bedroom. Does this need for respect pan out in the bedroom? Is that seeable? Is that experienced in the bedroom as well?
I approach it more of a pleasure. Let's have pleasure
Right, I see.
together, be sexual explorers, and make love to each other. I'm trying to think of like respect and making love to each other. I mean, that is a form of honoring, really. I mean,
Yes, yes, you're right. Ah,
honoring
brava. Yeah,
more so than respect. Somehow the word honoring fits better for
yeah,
making
yeah.
love than
Yeah.
respecting.
You're right. You're right. You're
And
right.
delighting that person, making them
Delighting.
feel
Yeah.
safe and making them feel good. So respect doesn't quite feel like the right word, but it underlies most everything.
If you could give us a night, what key words come to mind when you think of a sensuous woman?
Um,
Main key
well,
words or concepts.
for a woman to be sensuous, okay, so she knows what she likes and she
The
knows
knowledge.
how to get it. And that is not selfish. Here's the thing that women
Aha.
need to know,
Good.
because your lover will be so delighted that he can please you that he doesn't have to try to be a mind reader with no experience of what it's like to be in a woman's body, no
Good.
experience like what it's like to be in your mind and your heart, and he's trying to guess what you like. So it's like a woman who knows what she likes, how to communicate it, how to get it, how to be pleased is a
Yeah.
delight for a man, a lover. And it doesn't matter that her body's not perfect. God knows none of us have a perfect body,
Yeah.
hardly anybody, right? And yet, what a man at the top of his list of what he's looking for in a lover is he wants someone that's enjoying herself, right? That
Right.
has a good
A
time.
happy
And
woman.
better, yes, and better yet, that she desires him.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
keeper.
Yeah. Do you work with men at all?
Indirectly, and sometimes half my clients don't, their husbands don't even know that they're working with me, right? They're trying to
Ah.
flip around a bad marriage and such, and it works. She just starts
Yeah.
showing up delightful and he
Yeah.
responds,
Yeah.
right? I don't need
I
to work with
bet.
both of them, but sometimes when they do know that we're working together, we'll do some exercises, like some sacred sexuality exercises, and he'll join on a Zoom call or things like that.
Nice.
But mostly I work it in a way that she can teach him.
Uh-huh.
So yeah,
Oh,
so I
that's
don't
nice.
actually need to work with the man. And if a man contacts me, I'm just like, nope, I work with the woman only. Send your wife.
Good. That's nice. That's well, thank you
You'll
so
be glad you
much.
did.
Yeah,
You'll be
you're
glad you
right.
did. Especially because this is not, let's face it, marriage counseling and things like that is like anathema to the male mind. Going
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
talking with a stranger in front of your woman about your
yeah.
fears, your
Of
feelings,
course.
your failures. This is
Forget
an
it. Yeah.
alternative to marriage counseling.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for this delightful conversation. It was such a pleasure, Debbie. I let's repeat where people can find you, the name of your website.
Yes, it's moreintimacy.net. And I also have a lively Facebook group called More Intimacy in Marriage for Women.
Oh, good. Good. That's a good thing. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. Any other connections that they need to know to find you?
YouTube, I have a bunch of videos on YouTube, some of which I have actually been able to convince my regular guy husband to appear with me in. So those are,
So if we want
he
to meet
does
your
it.
husband, we have to go
He,
watch.
he does it because, not because he wants to. I mean, my husband is not, he's not in the psychology, sexuality field at all, but because he loves me. I mean, a man who is loved
I
up
have no
will do
doubt.
a man who is so loved up, both physically and emotionally, will do almost anything for his woman.
That's sweet. That's so sweet. So what's the title? What's the name of your YouTube channel?
More intimacy.
More intimacy. Okay, so that's the
Yeah.
key word we were looking for, more intimacy. Thank you so much for coming. And
Thank you,
I'm
Claudia.
sure, our audience is thrilled because it's very difficult to talk about sex in a delightful way, in not a superficial way. And this
And
is
I hate to
interesting.
tell you what you said about, about feminism and such is you can't even talk about male female differences openly anymore.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
there's so much confusion out there because
yeah.
no one can say, "Oh, you know what? Men are like this, women are like this anymore." It's getting blurred and then all of us are in our masculine and we wonder what happens to attraction.
As blurred as politics are
Yeah.
today.
It's getting to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
political to say, hey,
yeah.
men and women are different. We have different ways of looking at the world. Oh my gosh, that's a firestorm, right?
Yeah, 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 and I'm sure you get you get that every now and then. Thank you so much again, and
Yeah.
I will be going to your website, as I'm sure my audience will, and your Facebook group. That especially I'll go to, as after we leave each other.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Bye bye, Debbie.